Good morning. You're listening to a special edition of the BLAINESWORLD show, ordinarily heard Wednesdays at 9 a.m. here on WPVM LP in Asheville, North Carolina. But this is just a video version of the show, and I'm here at my studio in Fairview, North Carolina, my lovely downtown studio, and I'm speaking with Brandi Andrade. Is that correct?
Yes.
I have it. Great. And it's my pleasure to welcome Brandi to the studio. And Brandi is a locally spitting out, and Brandi, I'll get it right. She's relatively new to the Asheville area from Dallas. And she has a PhD in theater and American women's history. And she teaches online courses at the University of Texas Arlington. She's been a commercial film, voiceover, and theater artist for 25 years, including 10 years as one of the producers at Dallas's feminist theater, the Echo Theater. She currently is in Magnetic Theater's current show, In the Middle of Nowhere, by Brett Murphy. And that's how I guess I met you. When I saw the show, I guess a couple of weeks ago, I was knocked over by it, Brandi. It was just super. Okay. And so welcome to the Asheville area. How long have you been here?
So I moved here on April 1st, which happened to be the very first night of rehearsals. So we literally rolled in, put the kiddies inside the new house, and I got back in the car and went to my first rehearsal for In the Middle of Nowhere.
What was so cool, I guess, about getting the play is that you did this video via a video audition.
Yes, the Magnetic held
Right,
season auditions earlier in the season, and I had just done it on a lark, thinking, well, I might as well start to get to know the theaters around town. And I was delighted when I was offered the role.
Now, had you ever done a video audition before?
Well, the pandemic was long and painful. So by the end of it, my agent had casting directors switched to self-tape and video auditions right away. So I'd done a bunch of those, and I don't know if the Magnetic was my first theater video audition, but theaters have really started doing that a lot as well. So it was among the earliest ones that I had done, but I've done several of them now.
That's really, I guess, a good experience for you, because you were telling me off the air that you're going to be directing something at Magnetic. And I guess we'll be doing that video, or will they actually be coming into audition for that?
Oh, well, actually, that's already been cast.
Okay.
Since I don't know anyone here, Katie Jones, the artistic director of Magnetic, helped me cast it. And I believe they utilized those season auditions as well. And of course, she knows a lot of people.
So you inherited the cast, but you'll be fine with it.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I was really thankful that I didn't have to try and hold auditions for something that's coming up so quickly.
Well, especially you can imagine also on your second day in town or something, like that. Yeah. Brandi, you mentioned to me also that, so your background had been in theater. How long have you been acting? Did you start as a kid?
Well, I grew up in Hawaii, and there was not a lot of theater there, but golly, my grandpa was calling me Hollywood from the time I was 3 years old. So I kind of feel like this was maybe the path that I was destined to be on. And I can remember, I'm a missionary's daughter, and my mom sort of shepherded a group of us in our small little church school. In middle school, there were maybe 6 of us in our little school, including my sister. And I was writing Thanksgiving plays for us to perform. And I remember this one that I wrote had to do with going back in time to the first Thanksgiving, and we even had sound effects. We recorded the weed whacker. I made my cousin Jesse go out and run the weed whacker, and we made a recording of it. And that, along with a spoon tapping on a glass of water mixed together, was the sound of that the time machine made whenever you got into it.
So were you in that play also?
Yes, I wrote, directed, and starred in it.
Now here's a question, because I have this crazy idea I shared with Katie, and I'll share it with you as well. So you were about how old then? Do you remember?
Oh, I must have been 10 or 12, probably 12.
Okay. Was there a video of this play?
No, there may have been pictures somewhere. My mom might have pictures from it somewhere.
Because here's my idea, Brandi. I really want to do this, consider magnetic theater at some point in time. But I think everybody should do their first play, right? Or they don't have to do the whole play as a fundraiser. We'll do maybe 5 minutes of it. Wouldn't that be cool if you relive this, that you did this as a 10-year-old, and we have a record of it, so you show your husband and show other people as well. But they actually, you started your career. So that was it. That was one of the first things you ever.
That probably was it. And then in high school, I went for a little while too. We stopped doing homeschool and I went to the Catholic high school on the island. And I got to play our choir director was also the theater director. We did this wonderful play about the last princess of Hawaii, Ka'iulani. And she went away to boarding school in England, and I got to play one of the white girls that she became friends with in the boarding school in England. And we got to tour that play to the capital city. We got to go to Honolulu, and the older Hawaiian people who saw that story were so moved by it. The story of Ka'iulani dying of a broken heart, which is the story in Hawaii, because the kingdom of Hawaii was stolen from her aunt, Queen Liliuokalani, in 1898 from the United States government. And then she died, a beautiful young princess. Shortly thereafter, she was poised to take the throne and she never got to. And it is a very powerful story in Hawaii. And it was so thrilling to be part of this play that moved audiences so much that might have been the thing that cemented it for me,
Now, as you describe it, it almost sounds like that'd be some sort of thing to, here as well. I think that'd be a very interesting play to see. So that got you into then the theater bug, I guess. That's when it first really bit you. And so you studied theater in college as well?
I did. I have a BFA, a Bachelor of Fine Arts from Oral Roberts University in Oklahoma. And then having a degree in theater, I obviously needed to go live with one parent or the other after college. So in the meantime, my parents had divorced and they'd both moved away from Hawaii, and my mom lived in Arizona and my dad lived in Texas. I picked Texas because Arizona, I didn't think the desert was for me, and wound up getting married, going to grad school and starting a life there. So I didn't really choose Texas, but my hand was kind of forced, and then I ended up making a really wonderful life there.
And then, so you were in Texas, you've been telling me off the air that you've been doing teaching while you were a faculty member. Were you also doing theater at the same time?
Oh yeah, I've never stopped doing theater. Yeah, so I found my agent. My agent found me actually while I was in grad school. And so she was so gracious to me when all the years that I was like, okay, I can't do auditions when I'm teaching. I can't do auditions during finals week. I'm going away to write my dissertation. So I'm going to be gone for 6 months. And she never was angry with me. She was very supportive. So I have to give her props for that. And so I was doing commercial work, mostly commercials, and voiceover work, because those are like short projects, and I really couldn't commit to film because I was doing so much theater. And during the semester, you can't really say, okay, well, I'm going off to be on a film set for a week and a half.
Right.
So yeah, I've been doing them, trying to have 2 separate parallel lives for the last 20 years. It's been kind of insane.
Now, also, you direct as well, is that correct?
Yeah, I was a producer at the Feminist Theater for a long time, which made sense because my PhD is in theater and American women's history. So this working at a women's theater was kind of where my heart was. So I ran a reading series introducing people to forgotten voices by women for a long time. And I started getting to direct small projects both at Echo and at school. And so that was kind of the beginning of directing for me. I was more focused on acting and also being a dramaturg. I researching like every show that we did at Echo. I provided essays on the playwright because, part of our project was introducing or reintroducing audiences to these important women's voices. And so I did a lot of research writing, and I did a few kind of, making show books for other productions. There was a production of The Cherry Orchard, and I did a big book on Chekhov and the history that was happening in Russia at the moment. And, just one of those research books for the cast to be able to use as a tool. But my favorite part is writing program essays for various shows, introducing the audiences to the themes, to the writer, to, whatever takes my fancy. And my favorite moment as a dramaturg, I wrote an essay on Paula Vogel for a show that I was actually in at the time at a theater that I really, really loved called Theater 3. It's one of the oldest surviving theaters in the United States, or it had the longest running artistic director. He's died a few years ago, but he'd been like one of the longest serving artistic directors in the country. And anyway, I was writing for him and I wrote this essay on Paula Vogel and her themes, and she retweeted it to her followers.
Oh, how exciting is that?
It was like, oh my God, can I just freeze this day and like relive it over and over again?
Well, let me ask you, out of all the things that you've done in terms of acted, you produced, you directed, you've done lots of things. In the theater world, do you have a preference? For example, acting or directing?
I think acting probably. Acting is really fun. I'm starting to love directing though. It uses different muscles, and as I start doing it more regularly, it stops feeling so effortful, because it's not it's muscles that I don't use all the time, so that if it feels like it takes more of my brain and more of focus to get that done. But I find that thrilling in a different way. If I was told I could only do one thing for the rest of my life, I would definitely pick acting. But I love directing, and I love exploring stories in that way, because it also helps me be able to tell stories and be a part of telling stories that I wouldn't be able to tell as an actor, because the roles aren't right for me.
It's interesting your response, because I ask that question of many actors and directors, and most of them who do both, like you do, say that they kind of like the directing, after they've done acting a large part. A large part, I guess, because they don't have to memorize the memorization.
That is becoming an issue, especially as I get older. I am terrified that I'm not going to memorize my lines. They're recorded on my phone, and I listen to them every single day. My spouse knows my lines now because he's heard my voice memos so darn often.
You read with him too?
No, he's not an actor. He just overhears me. I used to make him do lines with me, but I've actually found that listening to them helps them get in a little better than just trying to, when I was younger, I just used to read them, and then I could quiz myself, by covering them and do I know what it is? And I tried to work that way, but I don't sit still. I don't keep still long enough to sort of have a dedicated, now I'm going to work on my lines for an hour. But if they're recorded, they're with me when I unload the dishwasher. They're with me when I fold the laundry. They're with me when I run errands. And so they used to be with me when I commuted to school. And I just found that multitasking was a much more efficient way to get my life done. And so I've never looked back. And I think my spouse is happy with that.
Someday I'll tell you a story about this whole discussion of memorizing lines, but it's not easy for me too, So typically, and Katie put me in a show last year where I had 5 lines. That's at my speed, 5 lines, but to have a whole dialogue, and you had, and we'll talk about the show in just a bit, you have a good amount of dialogue in this show you're in now, and I just give you credit, because to me, it's tough, but some people can do it, I guess, fairly easily. And I guess the beauty of maybe this will be something else, have you ever written any plays?
I am not really a writer. I've created several performance pieces, and I actually love doing that. I used to do this for, oh golly, it will jump out of my head now, but the celebration of Women's Suffrage Day, women getting the vote in, I think it's August 20th. And there were several women's groups in Dallas that celebrated that out at at City Hall, and the mayor would be there, and there'd be a proclamation, and everyone wore white. And a number of years ago, I'd met them through some kind of organizations, and I wound up getting to put together a performance piece. So I take historical documents, and I played, like Susan B. Anthony at the Susan B. Anthony Award luncheon, where I piece together and edit together historical documents and that tell a different story perhaps than, you know, the document itself, like they're montages basically. And I would gather my girlfriend actresses and actually I started expanding and I included a guy in the last one I did. And it was like the history of suffrage in Texas. And so we had the governor, a silly governor of Texas in the 1920s. And my friend was wearing a cowboy hat and affecting a, you know, had a paper bag cigar and like just super, super fun and just kind of retelling the story of women's history in various ways that is fun and exciting and brings to light stories that have been forgotten because they haven't been centered as part of the history we tell ourselves.
I mentioned that because you said earlier, you know, about the play you wrote as an 8 or 10-year-old, you know, little girl. The beauty of it, if you ever do another one, Brandi, though, is that then if you do a one-person play, nobody knows if you mess up the dialogue. You know, so that's the one, except for your director, you know.
So I did a one-woman show in grad school. I did a version of the Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman, the short story about the woman who's suffering probably from postpartum depression, but she gets given the rest cure, which drove so many women mad at the turn of the century. She's basically confined in a room, and it was given to women who were getting uppity and not being happy with their station as wives and mothers if they wanted anything else with their lives. And it was apparently administered to Charlotte Perkins Gilman, and she wrote this story. And anyway, the story, the woman goes slowly mad through the course, and she starts seeing a woman behind the wallpaper. And by the end, she's crawling around on the floor and ripping the wallpaper off to free the woman, which is, of course, kind of like her other self who feels trapped. But anyway, somebody's cell phone went off in the front row during one performance, and it took with it the entire story. And I was there for like a second, and the only thing that came to mind was like this section of the story from near the end, like one of her journal entries. So I plugged it in the hole and kept on going and told the rest of the story. And then meanwhile, like a part of my brain is going, crap, what are you going to do when you get to that spot? Because you've already used that. And by then, the bit that had been lost when the cell phone went off came back to me. So I just used that to patch the hole when I got to it. And I got off stage, and it turned out that my lighting director, my director, like everybody had been flipping out because they didn't know what was happening. Because I had basically jumped to the end of the show, and they're like, oh, should we jump to the end of the show cues? I mean, what is happening right now? So I realized that it actually still does matter. People do know when you mess up your lines because you're never alone. Even if you're the only one on stage, there's a bunch of people helping to tell that story who are depending on you to tell the story in the linear fashion that they're accustomed to.
That's funny you said that because, you know, we're now used to turning off of cell phones. I believe you still need to make the announcement. Another day I was at a show, one-person show, Pasquale LaCourte did a George Burns show. In the middle of the show, and he announced everybody to turn off the phone. In a pivotal scene, the phone rang. You know, he was so annoyed. Can you imagine? And he was great, but it was devastating. You know, so people, why don't they learn? And especially when you remind them too, and they still forget. What?
I find that it happens more often in the second act. I think that people, especially because it's in the curtain sometimes, and so when people come in, they're getting ready to do the show, they're like, oh yes, turn off my cell phone. But then at intermission, they turn it back on to check their messages, and they forget to turn it back off. So we hear it most often as actors. We hear it in the second act, and we're always like,
used to hear it all the time, but I hear much less. But boy, when it happens, it can be disconcerting. Let's kind of go from there then, Brandi, to fast forward to where you are now, where I saw you the very first time. And so you were cast, which is really cool, in this play in the middle of nowhere. And talk a little bit about the casting experience, because again, as we mentioned, you weren't even in town when it was cast, right? So was that difficult for you to do, or?
Well, so actually it was a very fun and easy process. The reason that I had felt like I should go ahead and do it was that initially the season auditions were a monologue, as I recall. So I just, I tend to schedule myself for things that scare me. when I'm feeling strong and when I don't have a chance to back out of them. So I was thinking, you know what, girl, you need to start auditioning for things and blah, blah, blah. So I set up this appointment. And then, you know, as it started coming closer, I was like, oh my God, I should cancel. I don't even, but it was too late. I already had the appointment, and I'm better when I just like force my own hand. So it was coming up, and I had just done a show right before the pandemic happened, or the year before the pandemic. And it consisted, I played like a bunch of different characters, and each one had a monologue. And I was like, girlfriend, you have a bunch of monologues in your back pocket. Pick your favorite of those characters and just do it. So that's what I did. I just whipped out that old play, picked the play that I'd done the year before, picked my favorite of the characters, and that was the monologue I did for them. And Katie was there, and a couple of other magnetic people that I haven't met again since. I don't think so. I don't remember, but there were like, you know, 3 people there, and it was like a Zoom thing. So I'm not sure if they were using Zoom, but it, you know, it's one of those things. You go into the room and you're like in a little, you're a box and they're a box, and it was easy and fun. And I'd been accustomed to doing this for a little while, so it wasn't scary in terms of technology or, oh my gosh, this is so different. And then I didn't hear anything back from them. So I just thought, you know, no big deal. You just you start auditioning, so it's no big deal. And then I did another audition for the Montfort Players to do a Shakespeare show. And that was more like a single show. So then they had callbacks, and I was called back. And then, like, I don't know, a couple days later, they offered me a part. But I was checking my emails, you know, to see what was going to happen. And like literally 10 minutes before Mandy sent me the email offering me the part, out of nowhere, in the middle of nowhere, Katie emails me and says, hey, you did our season auditions. We were wondering if you'd be interested in this part. And I read the script and I was like, yeah, yes, please. This sounds amazing. So I said yes to Mandy. I said yes to Katie. And then I read Mandy's email like 10 minutes later, and I was like, oh man, they totally conflict. I'm so sorry. I just said yes to somebody else. So it, like, you know, it just kind of felt meant to be. Like Katie got me by 10 minutes. Do you know what I mean?
I feel so bad because I would have loved to have seen you at Montfort. Hopefully I will in the future. And Mandy does.
I totally will work there as well. I'm really interested in doing Shakespeare. I didn't do it in Dallas because they did it outside in the summer. And have you ever been to Texas in the summer? I just could never talk myself into doing it. But here, where we have decent summers, I thought I might really enjoy doing that.
And 90% of the shows go on as scheduled. It's such a lovely experience. So hopefully I'll see you there as well. But you get the plot then to come to Asheville, and you're in Asheville. First night you have rehearsals. And maybe if I can ask you kind of the Reader's Digest version of the story. So we don't want to give away because there's still a chance to see you in it. But kind of the Reader's Digest version. What's it about?
In the Middle of Nowhere is about this retired art teacher, Cynthia, who has undergone a tremendous event in her life that, you know, stuff, which comes out during the play, but she's just wound up sort of out in the middle of nowhere. And she meets a young fellow one night who is gets lost in the woods, and he wants to hike across her land, and they sort of strike up a relationship. He also has been through some stuff and is working through it. And so it's kind of, I think it's about, the story itself is really about their relationship and the way it grows and the obstacles that start getting in the way of it, and how that helps or keeps each of them from growing in their search for forgiveness and redemption. And my character, let's see, how will I tell you what is happening with Raeleen without telling you too much? I think Raeleen represents the voices that are interested in the status quo, are not interested in things that are scary or hard or different. And I think that's really important for us to think about in the world that we live in right now. and not just in the easy ways, you know, like it's really easy to go, well, I'm interested in growth and these people are not interested in growth, but like asking ourselves about the ways in which we really are, even if we think we're not, listening to the status quo in our own groups. Like we have our own definition of who defines the status quo in each of our different groups. And I think that Raeleen hopefully asks us to wrestle with that in our own lives rather than making easy judgments about who she is and how we're so much better than the way she operates in the world.
Now, when you had that role, had you ever done anything similar to that role, or had you ever been a caretaker kind of person? Was that kind of the first time you ever did that? Like,
I am, well, I often play, which is kind of like, I love this because, you know, my friends will teasingly call me Dr. Andrade, and I'm so serious and so passionate in school. But I often am asked to play sort of ditzy characters who don't get it, or, you know, when like part of me always wants to play, like, you know, the serious, strong character, like the woman in Wit, but you know, I'm always the mom who doesn't get it, or the, you know, the character whose wisdom comes out in spite of herself, I guess. So in some ways, Raeleen is really familiar to me. I've never played anyone exactly like her, which is part of the fun of being an actor, I think. But there's, you know, there's parts of me in her. There's parts of my mom in her. There's things that I understand about her. In fact, everyone teases me. Katie was really teasing me last week, and also like in a nice way. She was saying that I challenged everybody's thoughts about Raeleen with what the intensity and the passion that I brought to the character, and the, you know, the ways that I said, hey, you know, don't blow her off because of this. She's, you know, this is the reason for that. This is the justification for that. This is, you know, think about this. And I, you know, rather than, I didn't let anybody paint her with a broad brush and dismiss her in any way. And I think that that's because I could find parts of people I care about in her, and I wanted to be fair to her as much as I could be.
that's what I think you did, because again, to watch her, you kind of had, or I had mixed feelings about her, you know, different parts of it.
I think that's the exact right. Everyone usually dislikes her, but I think mixed feelings are the right response.
Right. But it was interesting because I was wondering, you know, how I was feeling about her. And then toward the end, it shifts, but it's a very interesting role. And it was kind of fun to watch you in it. Again, it's the first time I'd seen you in the play. And definitely a play people should see, you know, and even as you're talking about it, you think about it. You know, I was telling you off the air a little bit, I had a feeling about certain parts of it. It's almost too bad. I don't know how you feel about Talkbacks, but that would have been an interesting show to have a Talkback on.
Because there actually have been two.
Well, I was not the one that did.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry you missed that, because they've actually been really interesting.
It would be, and I would have loved to have spoken to the author on that. Let me just ask you your opinion about Talkbacks, because I have mixed feelings about it. Some actors I don't like them at all. You know, some kind of like it. Some I find they're too long. You know, the problem they'd be great if they were kept a certain amount of time. But as an actor, then performer, do you enjoy Talkbacks?
Oh, that's a tough question. As an actor, I don't often like them because I'm tired at the end. And particularly opening weekend, we had one, and you know, we were on we'd just been coming off our 8-day schedule. We'd been at the theater every single night for 8 days. And then it was our last day at the theater. And as soon as the show was over, we were going to get to go home and do our laundry and sit and, you know, like relax. And instead, no, you have to, you know, and they never made us, but, you know, we were torn because our hearts really just wanted to go home and relax. But our heads were like, no, you know, we support the play, we support the playwright, we support the theater, we need to do this. So as a performer, I sometimes just find that I'm tired, you know. As a producer and a director and a scholar of theater, I love them. And that was a big part of the reading series that I did. We produced staged readings of plays by women, and they were always followed by a really fun and feisty talkback. And I loved that. And I think that can be a really fun way for audiences to get their heads around a play and to get us in the habit of not taking them, like, plays aren't sitcoms. You're not meant to just take it in at the surface and go, well, that was fun, let's go out for a drink. Like, there really so much time and blood and money that no one has. Money doesn't grow on trees. There has been a lot of effort, and somebody believed enough to give up their free time and to find money under rocks to put this story on for you. And that's what I say to my students. Like, I feel like if we want to really engage in our world and engage with the art, then we owe more to the plays than treating them in that way. We should interrogate them. We should think about them. And if we don't want to do a talkback, fine, but maybe talk about them. I used to tell my students, go out for a beer after with your pals that you saw the show with and talk about your feelings about it. Think, talk about your favorite part or the part you didn't understand, and get everybody's feedback and just, wrestle with the ideas. And so I just believe so much in that it makes me love talkbacks, even though as an actor, I'm usually really tired at the end of the show. And for us, it was wonderful because we had the playwright and he did all the heavy lifting. And so that was kind of awesome. We just got to sit there and throw in a thing or two. And there wasn't like the pressure of talk about your process, talk about, it was like, I prefer them when they're about the play and not about how did you memorize all those lines.
Where sometimes it's annoying, you'll just hear, or you'll hear compliments. The compliments are nice, but that's not what I want to hear at a talkback. I'll make my own opinion. But it's funny, Brandi, because maybe it's an age thing too. But as I get older, I like shorter, so that see a show, a 2-hour show, a 3-hour show, and then have talkback. But and Katie does a very good job in the ones I've seen her do. But one talkback in town, they're over an hour long, which is too long, especially at night. I'm seeing a show at night.
It's 10:30 already, and you're gonna stay out till 11 or 11:30 now. Oh my Lord, I can't stay up that late.
Exactly, join the crowd. And Brandi, just to kind of move us fast forward a little bit. So this show, which you mentioned again, runs. We have a final weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Is that correct?
Yes.
And folks, I don't know if you have the website address handy. If folks want to get tickets to it, you have it handy.
Let me see if I can. I know if you see a poster around town, there's like that really handy QR code that you can just scan with your phone and it takes you directly there. But I believe the theater's website is
The Magnetic Theater.
The Magnetic Theater. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah. I'm looking it up right now just to make sure.
Because
I always forget, like, is theater on there and do they spell it R-E or E-R?
Well, exactly. That's the big debate. They spell it the right way, I believe, R-E. So it's Magnetic Theater. I believe it's dot.
Yeah, it's the Magnetic Theater RE.org. And if you just go to their website, they're going to like have, links and stuff to sort of take you directly to the purchase page.
And a compliment also to the Magnetic. They've really done a good job if you're concerned about safety protocols. You have the mask, the whole bit. So you should feel very comfortable. His first show, I'd actually gone to for a second show inside. Magnetic Theater came on board. They did a great outside show. You may have heard about. But this is kind of fun to actually see a show.
It's the first show any of us have done in a theater. Like, it was the first time being back in a theater, and it was so surreal. And like, it was surreal in like the first few seconds, and then it became so natural because it's just like your entire life before the pandemic, like it almost didn't exist, but then it became surreal again. But the stage manager takes our temperature every night. Everybody in the cast is either fully vaccinated like I am, or has had their first shot and they're like waiting for, like, they're about to come up to their second shot. Everybody in the audience is socially distanced. There's reduced capacity, and everybody in the audience is wearing a mask. And let's see, I think that, oh, and they've decided not to sell refreshments this time, so that people are not having the opportunity really to take off their mask and then put it back on. So everybody who is there is masked. Audience members are masked the entire time, and like the tech people in the booth, everybody who's not physically on stage is masked. And in the dressing room, we were going to put our masks on in the dressing room, but it just started being a pain, and like Raeleen wears a lot of makeup and it was messing up my makeup. So instead we keep the back door to the dressing room open all the time. And whoever's not on stage spends a lot of time out on the back porch in the fresh air. So we've been really good with that.
First time you've been to Magnetic, but you're blessed to also be in this magnificent large dressing room. You know, it's, I'm being a little facetious, you know, it's a little tight dressing room, but
yeah, I'm super thankful there's only 4 of us in the cast. Actually. I don't know how they do it.
I was in a show, I think they had like 12, and it's kind of crowded, you know, in that dressing room. And there were some changes in the costume. It was kind of interesting. Brandi, so the fast forward this a little bit. So we finished the run. It's this coming Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You really check the tickets if there's some available. And where does that leave you after the show is over? Do you have any upcoming plans?
Yeah, actually, I have been given the opportunity to the next, I think the next thing up for Magnetic, although they're also doing the Smoky Mountain thing on Tuesdays, which I haven't been able to go to yet because I've been in rehearsals, but I see the posts from that. But anyhow, I think their next thing in the theater is a 1-act play festival that is taking place July 11th through 13th. And it's a bunch of like short 10-minute-ish plays. And so some of them will run Friday night and Saturday matinee, and then a second group of them will run Saturday night and Sunday matinee. So there's like a bunch of different things. You could come twice in that weekend and see different stuff. And anyhow, I'm directing one of those, and I'm super excited about that. So right away, I got to act, and now I'm getting to direct. So it feels like a lovely, open-armed welcome to Asheville, which is very exciting to me.
And when does that go in rehearsal?
I think we'll start rehearsals for that like right after I wrap up the show, because you know it's coming up so quickly.
Really, very excited to have you in Asheville. Very excited to see you work at Magnetic. Hope to see you, Montford. Hope to see you all around town. And boy, that's some way to get indoctrinated into Asheville, or come off a boat in a play. And great job on this one. I really want to thank you for being on the special edition of the BLAINESWORLD show. We're going to be putting this up on Facebook Live. It'll be up hopefully soon. And ordinarily, hope to see you next Wednesday at a regular time at 9 a.m. for the BLAINESWORLD show. And I'd like to thank you again, Brandi, for being my guest. And hopefully we'll get to see you many times in the future in Asheville.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, be well. Thanks again.